Good afternoon, good evening, and good night. This is Screen Watching. My name Dan Barrett, joined by Simon Foster. We are recording on Good Friday 2023, and if we're recording a Screen Watching, it's not just a Good Friday, it's a great Friday.
This is not like TV, only better.
Television! Teacher, mother!
Secret lover.
What, that's it? That's your movie?
Well, I said that I had an idea for a movie.
This is Screen Watching. It's our weekly discussion about what we've been watching on our various screens, big screens, small screens, even smaller screens, and sometimes much bigger screens than the screen that you thought I don't know. Folks, this is Screen Watching. My name's Dan, joined by Simon Foster. We have a whole bunch of things we're talking about. Some very big titles, big, huge titles, and some titles that are less than big. But here's what you can expect to hear. We've got reviews. We're talking Super Mario Brothers movie. We're talking about the new A24 TV series Beef. We're talking about Air, the Michael Jordan sneaker movie. We're talking about The Company You Keep. We've got Murder Mystery 2. That's Jennifer Aniston and Adam Sandler. Does it get bigger? And sometimes the answer can be yes, because you've got Russell Crowe and the Pope's Exorcist. Folks, this is a big episode. Simon Foster, how are you feeling? Well, how are you feeling about this week?
Well, that's
on the
a
podcast?
daunting lineup of films. Hello, Screen Watchers. Hope everyone's very well, and happy Easter if that's your thing. Look, I went through that list of movies with you, and I'm daunted. It's daunting. There's a lot of quality with an asterisk out there, and I understand you've got some good TV to get through as well. We've got a very interesting, forward-thinking, very progressive thinking intermission section as well, where we look at what's got us excited in the months ahead, and a whole lot of bits and pieces through the show. So it's a very busy Screen Watching, as is always promised to you people out there.
And look, we've got a very forward-thinking group of people on this podcast as well. Is there anyone more progressive than you and I? I mean, I struggle to think of anyone.
Let's get straight into the reviews, because I think what is going down is just one of the busiest Easter movie-going periods that we've seen in a long time, plus a bunch of good shows dropping onto the TV. So let's get on with it.
It stinks.
I am incredibly excited, despite the fact I've heard a few middling reviews about it, about the Super Mario Brothers movie.
Let's go.
So what has happened over the last 3 decades is that the word Super Mario Brothers has come to, I guess, signify the very worst of video game adaptations. We're talking about the 1993 film, which has certainly been reassessed over those decades, but which came out at a time when video games and movies weren't gelling, and is often held up as the worst of the worst. Now, what you have with the new film is something unlike the original film that sticks very close to the game, and I will preface it by saying I've played very little of the games, but from the reactions of the people around me, this movie gets it a whole lot more right than the other movie does. This one is directed by Aaron Horvath and Michael Jelenic, who did the Teen Titans Go to the Movies film a couple of years back, which I thought was terrific and very funny. This one skews a whole lot younger, but that is certainly evident in the color scheme that uses in this. It's one of the most beautiful films to look at in terms of animation in a long, long time. It's fluid, it's action-packed. All the money was spent on animation. Very little of the money was spent on the script or the script doctors to punch it up a bit. This is a very, very safe entry into the world of cinema for the Nintendo cinema universe. And what you get is a very palatable, very internationally flavored behemoth blockbuster that I guess all at Nintendo are hoping will kickstart a whole series of Nintendo movies. Plotline, very simple. Mario and Luigi are sucked into another realm, the Mushroom Kingdom, where the princess, voiced by Anya Taylor-Joy, is determined to fight off Bowser, the giant turtle monster thing. I'm not even quite sure what you call him. We'll probably get emails about that description. Before he destroys.
He's a dinosaur.
Okay, good to know.
He's a dinosaur monster.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
Controversy, Chris Pratt as the Italian Mario. It's very cleverly handled in the first few minutes of the film. He doesn't talk with an accent. We'll get to that later with Russell Crowe. But the general feeling and demeanour of the film is pleasant, family-friendly, if altogether unremarkable. And that pretty much sums up the Super Mario Brothers movie.
Okay, so I'd like to just have a point of contention. At the beginning, you said that there's been a reassessment of the Mario Brothers movie. I don't think that's true. I mean, there may be the occasional person who decides to be a contrarian, but by and large, the Super Mario Brothers movie, when it was released back in, 93. What was it, 93? Yep. 93? Was basically one of the defining events of young people's lives in that nobody knew they could be disappointed so heavily. Like, it really was a black mark on a lot of our cultural experience.
To which I will say, in overnight in...
Sorry, Simon. Sorry, let me just quickly finish my thought. People believed that at the time, and nobody has really stepped back to reappraise this movie as you claimed. Everyone has more or less said the movie was shit. And when occasionally you hear of someone who's gone back just trying to give it a rewatch, they've come back saying, no, it was pretty shit. Nobody has reappraised this movie by any means.
There is one person I can quote to you who has reappraised this film, and that is a certain Q Tarantino at his Beverly Hills cinema not that long ago. He put on a screening of it. He thinks it's worth reassessment. He had the two directors out there, Annabelle Jenkins and Rocky Morton, who are a married couple. They, while certainly admitting that it's a mess structurally, and I'm quoting them on that, the response from the audience was generally good. And so there has been...
Okay, wait. This is a real flawed premise.
We should point out that it did come out at a time when there was a huge divide between Hollywood and the gaming industry, and any kind of crossover like that was viewed with a great deal of skepticism. It was a terrible production history as well. They had clashes with the studio, with the producers, with the stars. John Leguizamo has admitted that both he and Bob Hoskins were drunk through most of the film. But it was a big, bold, ambitious roll of the dice. I'm not saying it's a great film, and I was front and center of it. I had to sell it on video, for God's sake, when I was a rep back then. So I was all over the original Super Mario Brothers movie. But there is some stuff in there that you wouldn't get away with nowadays just because Hollywood's not that ambitious and not that doesn't roll the dice like that anymore. So I have a fondness for it, while certainly admitting it's not a particularly great film.
Fondness for that movie. It's trash. Trash, Simon, trash. Okay, now I'm enthused about it, and despite the fact that I've heard that it's a little bit middling, I'm actually kind of okay with that generally, because as I said, this original Super Mario Brothers film was such a black stain culturally on so many of us that I actually don't mind that they've played it a little bit safe with this film, even to the point of making it slightly generic, because I just kind of feel that this is almost a palate cleanser to see Mario on the big screen.
I can see that.
I don't feel they could have ever really gone too bold or ambitious on it, because they went bold and ambitious back in 93, and it was a massive failure. To be completely honest, I don't really understand how you translate the bizarre oddity of the world of Super Mario Brothers to a narrative feature film. So the fact I've been able to do it with any level of coherence, I'm actually just incredibly impressed by that, because Mario Brothers as a game is fucking weird. It is a strange beast of a game that is very charming, but narratively, it's not nothing. So look, I'm enthused to check this out, and the challenge I have is that I do have a child in my household. She's too young to take to the movies, so I can't take her along. And I don't want to go to the movies with a whole bunch of kids around, so I'm going to be looking for my 8:30, 9:30 session sometime soon and
check it out.
Yeah. So that might be tonight. Look, I did have lofty plans, Simon. Sorry, just for a glimpse into my world. On Wednesday night, I got along to a screening of the Pope's Exorcist, which I'm going to be reviewing later in the show. Yeah. My plan for Wednesday night was to go along and see the Pope's Exorcist at 6:30. Pope's Exorcist, mercifully, I mean, just generally talking about movies, let's not even dismiss that movie. We'll talk about that in a bit. But less than 2 hours, okay? And because there was a movie screening, not that many trailers beforehand, so I'd be able to roll straight out of the Pope's Exorcist into an 8:30 of Super Mario Brothers. except my wife decided she wants to come along. She wasn't going to stick around for Mario Brothers, so it just kind of upset my evening a little bit. So I haven't seen Super Mario yet, and it kills me a little bit. But I reckon tonight, once she's asleep, once my baby's asleep, I'll be sneaking out the front door of the house and saying, Mamma mia, I'm off to see Super Mario.
Well, I hope you enjoy it. As someone who's fleetingly endeared to the game, I think you'll have the sort of time that many around me had in the screening, giggling when I didn't giggle, or nodding their head knowingly when I had no idea what they were nodding their heads at. So there's plenty of Easter eggs. There's plenty of game references in this to make it an enjoyable experience for the two generations of gamers that have come out since that original Mario movie hit. It's in cinemas now, very wide and destined to make a whole lot of money. Super Mario Brothers. What's up next?
Oh gosh, I'd like to take the phrase very wide and have some sort of very funny, dirty segue, but I can't do that. Instead, let's talk about the new TV series that's just debuted on Netflix. It's called Beef.
Amy, are you okay?
Yep.
I've been hustling my whole life. And look where it's gotten me.
Let's make it stop.
Now, Simon, I think it would be very easy to hear about a TV show called Beef and not have sort of thoughts about the recent Disney Plus Hulu series, The Bear. Like, that was very beef heavy, but it's a different type of beef. It's not the meat, it's people having a beef. It's people, getting cranky and angry at each other. The premise of this TV series is that you've got two people, both of them have severe levels of frustration in their lives. One of them, it's a woman played by Ali Wong. She is on the cusp of being able to, I don't think she's selling her business. I think she's licensing her business to a very large national chain store. She's got a business that specializes in sort of artistic plants. And so the idea is that she's on the cusp of doing this. It's been a deal she's been working on for 2 years, but the larger company that she's dealing with, the woman that runs it, who I think is supposed to be a bit of a Jeff Bezos-y sort of a figure, but maybe not quite that wealthy. And it's certainly bricks and mortar. It's not, internet retail. That kind of grinding their gears a little bit, and it's just a little bit frustrating. That character's played by Maria Bello, so awesome. I wouldn't call it a cameo because it's a bit more than that, but it's definitely a sort of lot of supporting role. She's lovely. She's quality stuff. Yeah, she's great, and I like Ali Wong. She's she brings her Ali Wongness to the role. Meanwhile, you got this other character played by Stephen Ewan, and he is a guy who he grew up. His parents ran a small sort of downtrodden motel. His cousin, not the parents' cousin, his cousin was dealing some illegal goods out and created a bit of a police incident, which meant that the parents ended up having to sell the motel. And in the seemingly like 5 to 10 years since, there's been just a level of financial impoverishment throughout the family. So the parents are struggling. They're they're working some pretty low rent jobs. Stephen Ewan feels the weight of all this as the older brother, the older son, sort of, dealing with the ramifications of that. He runs ostensibly a handyman business, but basically he'll just take any work that he can and just try to, make it work sort of financially. He's got a younger brother who's a bit of a layabout, who's investing all of his time in crypto. So he's kind of doing okay on crypto, but the brother played by Stephen Ewan is a little bit sort of put out by that because he's going out there doing a lot of traditional work and sees his brother just, flouting essentially that level of sacrifice.
So there's an undercurrent of tension amongst the key players in this, I can sense.
Very much so. And so the Stephen Ewan character, I'm not going to talk about why, but we find him at the very beginning of the series, and he's got a number of products that he's returning to the big box store, which is the same chain that Ali Wong's character is trying to sell her fancy plant business to. He's returning this. He has trouble returning the goods because he doesn't have the receipts on him. He goes out into the car park, puts the products in the back of his pickup truck, and he's just kind of steaming and fuming about the whole situation. And then he gets cut off in the car park by the Ali Wong character. And so he just has a moment of road rage, and she's pissed off as well. So the two of them are there, like, very dangerously driving on the streets, have a big incident. It's captured on video, and so there's a bit of a viral conversation happening about people, you know, treating the streets like, you know, it's their own Fast and the Furious, you know, landscape. So that's going on, but you're kind of dealing with these two people, a bit of a cat and mouse situation where they don't know who each other are at the beginning, but they've got license plates and they're able to work out who the other driver is, and their lives get intermeshed between the two of them. It's very funny. It's very tension-filled. It's got these great performances by Ewan and Wong, really interesting supporting cast, and a really relatable sense of personal struggles and frustrations that they're experiencing. Even if you've never tried selling a fancy plant store to a big box retailer store, you can still appreciate where she's coming from and where that frustration is. And I don't know if you can hear my dogs who are wrestling on the ground, but it seems like a metaphor for this TV program.
There's something going on in the background.
It's very good. I've only seen the first 2 of 8, so I don't quite know exactly how, you know, the show's going to progress from here. But look, I'm in. In the same way that The Bear has this really sort of glorious tension and comedy running through it, this is such a similarly vibed TV show. So if you went into it with thoughts about The Bear, because you've seen the word beef, because beef kind of plays through The Bear a fair bit, and there's a number of beefs through it as well. I don't know, they're very interesting companion sister programs in vibe and just
I'll be checking it out.
So if you like The Bear, check out Beef.
One of my favorite movies in this. I thought this was going to have a similar sort of tangle to it, but when you came out and said it was also funny, I maybe rethought that. But Changing Lanes, the Ben Affleck film with Samuel L. Jackson from a few years ago, it was about a road rage incident that I was sort of expecting something from Beef, sort of from what I'd read and heard about it, but maybe it's maybe a bit more complex.
No, that's probably it's a fairly comparable sort of a tone in terms of that tension and the cat and mouse sort of nature.
And Stephen Ewan can do no wrong. He's sort of everywhere at the moment and doing a lot of good work. So, certainly be checking that out. It's called Beef, and it is where? I didn't hear.
You can find that one streaming on a website called Netflix.com.
I know of it, yes. Okay, cool. Netflix.com. All right, where do we jump into next, my friend?
Oh, look, I mean, where do we jump to next? Shall we go to, what's the second thing on your docket there?
See what I did there? Sorry, jump. That was the segue. Was that too vague?
Sorry.
That was the segue. It's a professional show. Let's jump to air.
I mean, jump. I wouldn't go jump. I mean, like, obviously Michael Jordan does, like, you know, dunking, like, you know, that's kind of thing. You've got a Ben Affleck segue you could have made from talking about Changing Lanes over to air because he directed this film. There was a whole bunch of options. Jump. Like, come on, Simon. Stop trying to lay the blame on me for a segue that just did not work.
1984 has been a tough year. Our sales are down. Our growth is down.
Sonny, I brought you in here to grow the basketball business.
People don't know what the hell a Nike is.
What's a Converse?
NBA All-Star shoe.
There's nothing cool about Nike.
You would have to have a pretty compelling pitch.
I can tell them the one thing the other companies can't compete with. Our basketball division is terrible.
I do not love it.
One of the most entertaining films of the year hit cinemas this week. It's called Air, as we've just mentioned. This is the story of the Nike talent scout / sales executive called Sonny Vaccaro, played by Matt Damon, who is in charge of trying to build any kind of business for the footwear chain in the basketball market at the time. And this is set in a wonderfully reconstructed 1984. Adidas and Converse absolutely dominated the basketball shoe market, and Nike were desperate to get in on the game to the point that they were targeting young rookies who showed a great deal of potential to try to get them at the start of their career. Now, the young rookie that Sonny Vaccaro notices and starts to drill down on is a young man named Michael Jordan, who at that stage was maybe the third or fourth rookie pick coming out of college. He wasn't immediately recognized as the great that he would become, but Sonny Vaccaro saw something in some footage of him that led him to believe that Nike would like to tie their basketball shoe ambitions to his name, and he set about convincing the Jordan family, led by matriarch Viola Davis, that Jordan should come to Nike. Before he gets to Viola Davis, he has to convince Ben Affleck as Philip McKnight, the head and founder of Nike. He has to convince Jason Bateman as his immediate boss Roger to let him go after Michael Jordan, and not only go after Michael Jordan, but put their entire development budget on this young unknown's name. And Sonny Vaccaro puts everything on the line to secure Jordan's deal. So we know how this ends. We know how this moment in sporting marketing history changed the industry forever, changed the way that players do deals with merchandisers, and how sport itself became a multi-billion-dollar industry based on endorsements. What we didn't expect from a show like this was A, how funny it is in parts, B, how engaged you become with the characters, especially for some reason the Jason Bateman character. He sort of becomes the heart of this film and is terrific. And it should come as no surprise what an entertaining bit of commercial filmmaking Ben Affleck is capable of when he puts his mind to it. And this is probably most in line with his film Argo, in that it takes this quite bizarre moment in American modern history and turns into this terrifically entertaining film. There's going to come a point where it's just easier to make Jesse Plemons thinner than it is to make Matt Damon fatter. They're kind of getting to the same person. But Matt Damon is terrific in the lead role in this, and I got to say it's one of the best times I've had. Not just because of the grotesquely retrospective love I have for the '80s, and the opening montage where they show all these, reminder moments from 1984. Sort of certainly brought back my youth. But the film itself, and you don't have to be a basketball fan to watch this, in much the same way that you didn't have to be a baseball fan to love Moneyball, which is a similar sort of tangential story set in the world of sport. So yeah, Air has come out of America with a lot of great reviews, and every one of them earned. It's a terrific film.
Yeah, look, I caught this one a couple of weeks ago, and I adored it. It's lightweight. Like, certainly don't go into this expecting really sort of much substance to the whole thing, but it's just generally a good vibe going through. I mean, the overall message of it is a bit sort of overly capitalistic and pretty gross, but it's kind of, it engenders such a good spirit throughout the film as well that, I don't know, you're kind of willing to overlook sort of what you're actually watching, which is a bunch of guys who are already doing pretty well financially suddenly making billions upon billions of dollars through some fairly
I think that's one of the achievements of the film, in that, yes, you're watching a story about how a billion-dollar capitalist empire became a bigger billion-dollar capitalist empire, but it turns it into a very human sort of workplace kind of storyline, and that's and all credit to Affleck and the writers of this for getting that right.
Yeah, look, it's a lot of fun, and as soon as I finished watching it, I was keen to catch it on Amazon Prime Video as soon as it opens there. So this is a thing that was originally made as an indie film through the new production company set up by Affleck and Damon. They ended up selling it to Amazon for a ridiculous amount of money. It was like about $160 million or something, which is probably about $155 million more than they spent making this movie. It is a fairly cheap production.
Yeah, it doesn't. I mean, it doesn't look cheap, but it's certainly a single setting. A lot of it takes place in those office walls around Nike. So yeah, you're right.
That's it. I mean, if it wasn't for the star power, if you just had like a bunch of unknowns in this, like, it could just as easily be a small little indie darling as it is a film that feels like it's got the large scale scope, because it is something which is really filmed in a couple of small rooms just repeatedly. It's in a generic office building where Nike was supposedly headquartered in the 80s.
Is it too much to suggest that Jason Bateman has got to be edging towards a supporting actor nod? Because I thought he was terrific in this film, and he comes with so much goodwill and is so likable in just about everything he does. You forget that he's also a very good actor. And he has a couple of scenes in this which highlight that. So in a cast of great performances, I thought he was terrific.
Look, I think he's pretty good. I found his hair to be incredibly distracting because it's very large.
As this was called during...
big hair he's working on here.
To quote Tina Fey, during production, this was called Explosion at the Wig Factory. There's some pretty wild hairdos in there.
And look, while he was pretty good, I'd also say some of the other like really strong supporting performances. You've got Chris Tucker, who I haven't seen on screen for years and years and years. He's there playing a former basketball player who now just works at Nike. And also Chris Messina, who plays a very sort of Ari Gold type of screaming agent character. He is incredibly magnetic to watch on screen here with some
terrific.
cracking dialogue and some very funny lines. Most of his scenes, and I could be wrong, it may actually be all of his scenes, is really just him sitting at a desk screaming down a phone. And like, it's electric every time he's on screen. Like, if we're talking supporting like Oscars, he'd definitely be a strong contender for me.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, sorry, I got distracted by my thought about Amazon Prime Video earlier. I was going to say this is a unique release for them, where it's not like the rest of the Prime Video releases where it's expected to come out on streaming like 2 weeks after the theatrical release. This is something where if you want to see Air, you got to go and watch it in the cinema, and it'll come onto Prime Video in a couple of months. So it's not going to be an immediate thing, which I find slightly frustrating as the first one not doing it, because this is something which I think I'll be rewatching many times.
All right, Air is through Universal Pictures. It is also in wide release. Tell us about the company you keep.
10 million, as agreed.
I'll need to confirm the funds. Okay, it's on the transfer of ownership, and we are...
Chopper. We gotta go.
FBI, on the ground, now!
Put a little too much mustard on that one, Pop.
What? Gotta commit to selling.
We just pulled off the biggest job of our lives. Great timing on that chopper.
Right? Did you get it?
Of course I got it.
The Company You Keep, not to be confused with the 2012 movie, which I think I may have been the only person that saw at the theater. Yeah, someone's looking at me confused. I had a Robert Redford in it.
The Company You Keep? With...
Yeah, go Googling. You'd be like, oh, yeah, I kind of remember that.
Was that the one he did with Kate Blanchett? Was that the...
Was Kate Blanchett in it? I can't remember who the female lead
Google.
was.
You review, I'll Google.
Yeah, you do that. But anyway, there's a TV show called The Company You Keep. It is based on a South Korean series called My Fellow Citizens. It stars Milo, and I've never quite known how to pronounce his surname here, Ventimiglia.
That's good. You and...
anytime I've said it, I've always kind of done the Ventimiglia. Milo Ventimiglia, who we all know best from the Gilmore Girls, but obviously has since been in shows like This Is Us and bunch of other series and some movie roles around the place. He's the lead in this one. He's a con man who, at the very beginning, in the opening sequence that we find in the series, he's there striking a deal to sell a warehouse to some fairly shady characters. It's implied that they may have some sort of terrorist bent to them, but you don't quite know exactly what they want their warehouse for. He's there, and then suddenly the FBI raid. He's got the money for the warehouse, and as the FBI raid it, the people that are buying the warehouse end up scampering off pretty quickly. And then you realize that the FBI raiding isn't the FBI at all, but really it's members of his family and his fiance who are all there in their FBI garb, and it's all part of an elaborate con being committed on some criminals. Very quickly, the Milo Ventimiglia character, later that night, they're at their bar, because of course they have a bar. That's how these things work in screen entertainment. They're at their bar, and they're looking at the card thing, which is going to be their gateway towards the money that's been, dropped into their accounts. Suddenly find it's gone, and also his fiancée happens to be gone as well. So the family of con people have been conned by a woman. He's heartbroken. The woman that he loved, that he thought he was going to be spending his life with, turned out to be someone that was conning him. And so it takes him to another bar late at night where he ends up sitting at a bar with another woman who, the character's name's Emma. She is played by Catherine Hayner Kim. I've never seen her on screen before, but she's fantastic. Her and Milo Ventimiglia, great chemistry on screen. You find these two sitting at a bar late at night. Both of them have been heartbroken. And the two of them end up hooking up, have a very meaningful night. And when I say hooking up, they don't sort of hook up physically as much as emotionally. They have a night where, they're kind of in each other's lives, talk to each other, sharing stuff. Like, they are ensconced together. Like, you can see this is a relationship that's going to build. Except here's the twist with the program. He's a con man, as we know. She's an undercover CIA agent. She doesn't know that he's a con man, but they both come from different sides of the law. And how are they going to sort of get together and keep this romance going, especially when the people that Milo was trying to con at the very beginning come right back at the end of the first episode?
This could only happen in television.
This is it. This is classic, like 80s, 90s moonlighting inspired television. It's not as witty. Well, it's not as witty as like a moonlighting show, but it really is something which sort of very heavily emphasizes this great chemistry between the two. The show only works if there's chemistry between the two leads, and it absolutely does. This is a show that should not be something that I'm excited to watch episode 2 of, but I'm very keen to watch episode 2 of this. It's not great. If I stop watching in a few episodes' time, I fully expect that to be the case. But at the moment, I like the retro vibes of this. It's got a good cast. You got these great leads in there. Other people you'll see in there is Sarah Wayne Callies, who people might remember from The Walking Dead. She was what's-his-name's wife. You know, that guy who's the lead of the show.
And walks and talks.
Yeah, he's got the hat and the gun. So anyway, the wife from The Walking Dead. But then also you've got William Fichtner, who plays Milo's character's father. You know, I mean, you can't go wrong with Fichtner. And also Polly Draper, who people may remember from 30-something, is in this as well, playing Fichtner's wife and Milo's mother. Good cast, highly engaging, disposable TV.
I tell you what has a good cast, the 2012 film The Company You Keep, starring... Get a load of this. Robert Redford, Stanley Tucci, Nick Nolte, Shia LaBeouf, Julie Christie, Susan Sarandon, Chris Cooper, Richard Jenkins, Terrence Howard, Anna Kendrick, Brenda Gleeson, and Britt Marling, and Sam Elliott. That is an extraordinary... And not only do I know this film, but I think I own it on DVD and watched it maybe a long time ago. So, directed by Robert Redford. Yeah, so I don't even... Did this play at movies, did it? I don't even remember this going to the movies.
This did play at movies. I remember seeing it at what is Event Cinemas in the My Centre in Brisbane. And I've got a very strong memory of this one because the front speaker on the left-hand side of the screen was crackling all the way through the movie. And I went to complain about it afterwards, and it just took ages to get a manager to even take it seriously. It was a real frustration.
Let it go, for God's sake. All right, so The Company You Keep TV series is where?
That's streaming on Disney+.
And The Company You Keep movie can be found, who knows where. It's an oldie, but it looks like a goodie. All right.
Who knows?
My last review, and I've got some very serious things to say about this, Murder Mystery 2.
Yo, Raja. Yo, Nick, the Maharaja is getting married. What? This weekend, I'm on New Private Island, and I want you to come.
Do you remember what happened last time we were on a getaway?
Yeah, some people died.
Not a lot of people.
You'd think 5 people dying's a lot.
Okay.
This is a movie that exists entirely to take advantage of the chemistry of Jennifer Aniston and Adam Sandler together. The first film was a success for the Netflix team. This one, by all accounts, is another huge success for them. Viewing numbers are right up. Surprisingly, it's made as a play for the international market. They have cast in this UK actor, the terrific Mark Strong, a couple of big French names in Melanie Laurent and Danny Boone. They set a lot of this in, first of all, a tropical resort and then the streets of Paris. I got to admit, I like these two together, and at a very brisk 90 minutes, it's entirely watchable and likable. It is entirely meant as a throwaway 90-minute movie that you can just put on and do your housework or read a magazine at the same time. But I was a little bit surprised at the production quality of it and some of the names they did get involved. I am not going to try and tell you the plot. It's right there in the title. But it's just...
Simon, can I ask some questions? Is there a murder in it?
There is a murder in it, yes.
Okay, is the murder some form of a mystery?
It develops into quite the mystery, yes, exactly. Much like the first film.
Has there been... Well, I was going to say, this might tie into my third question. Has there been a prior murder mystery?
Yes, there has, leading to this being the second of the murder mysteries, starring Jennifer Aniston and Adam Sandler. You know what you're getting if you're tuning in for this one. I had a good time. It's the standard, very passable 3 out of 5 kind of movie if we gave ratings on this one. Just good Netflix fodder.
Okay, if we're going to do star ratings, the question that surrounds the Pope's Exorcist is 5 stars, ?
Father Gabriele Amort. On the night of June 4th, you performed an exorcism.
That was not an exorcism.
So, Simon, one of the great disappointments with this movie is that at no point there is not the phrase written across the screen based on a true story, which I find very
But isn't
sad.
he the main? But isn't the main
This
character
film,
a real guy? No.
yeah, he is. So that's why I'm disappointed it doesn't say based on a true story. So in this one, Russell Crowe plays a guy by the name of Gabriel Amorth. So Gabriel Amorth is a man who was an exorcist for the Diocese of Rome. Apparently, in 1990, he founded the International Association of Exorcists, which I think is just a good bit of information to have on board. Okay, so he's an Italian man, which the great news is Russell Crowe is doing an accent all the way through this movie. Now, I think the accent is fantastic. I hadn't really sort of put two and two together, but definitely once Simon Foster did suggest that this was maybe inspired by Mark... gosh, what's his name? The Australian comedian.
Yeah, Con the Fruiterer. Yeah, that guy. I can't remember his name.
Mark.
Look at us.
Yeah. Anyway, the classic Australian sketch comedy character Con the Fruiterer. As soon as I heard that, I was like, I think Russell may have been inspired by Con the Fruiterer because there's definitely a couple of days sort of a.
I think I did make the point in the text to you that in the week that we're all sort of got our ears peeled for Chris Pratt's version of Italian in Super Mario Brothers, it's actually Russell Crowe's in The Pope's Exorcist that takes it a cheese, it takes it a cake.
Here's the thing. I actually don't think it's that bad an accent. It's only funny because it's coming out of Russell Crowe's mouth. Okay, like this is not the over the top performance that we saw in House of Gucci. Like this is not one of those sorts of performances. This is actually like he's certainly playing it for laughs a fair bit. Okay, even this is the complication with the movie. Okay, so first of all, let's talk about what the plot of The Pope's Exorcist is, and then we can talk about how this is a tonally interesting kind of a film. So The Pope's Exorcist, it's about this real-life exorcist named Gabriel Amorth. And the thing with him is that, and this might have been a quote that he sort of gave in real life, but I think they do echo it through the film, which is that he's an exorcist, but like 99% of everything he did was just talking to people that have mental illness. Okay, but there was always that 1% of things which, you know, he says is like legitimately like scary exorcism shit. That's my phrasing, not his. This film is about him going along to one of those 1% sort of moments in his career. So we see a very sort of distressing opening sequence where he's going to one of the 99%ers and there's a pig that gets brutally murdered in it. But like that was kind of the standard sort of thing that he's going to. And you sort of see the way he works. He goes in, he manages the family of the person who's possibly unwell or, you know, taken. So he manages them and then he goes in to try to understand where this person's coming from. So he's usually got a bit of an idea before he gets in there. You can sort of tell that he's taking something a little less seriously than he probably would otherwise. And you do see the dichotomy between the two, good sort of comparison between the two. But he's in the first one, you see how he handles a regular exorcism. And then this other one is such a bigger issue. All right. The bigger story relates around him going out to a former church in Spain, and it's a gorgeous looking church that's fallen into disrepair. There's an American family that have moved in. It's a mother and two kids, a son and daughter, and they've inherited the place because the recently deceased father in the family had this in his family for years and years, and so it's kind of fallen to them. It's in disrepair. They don't really have any money, but they've got enough cash to be able to try to do up this old church and sell it off. Unfortunately, the kid, the young boy in the family, he gets taken by some sort of a demon that has his grips on this old church. And so you're following what is going to be the obvious exorcism of him. Now, the church end up deploying the Russell Crowe character out there. He's a character who's kind of fallen into disrepute because this is the early 90s and suddenly, I wouldn't say that the church has gotten woke, but maybe it's become a little bit dismissive of the idea that there's actually a need for an exorcist. So he's kind of come along at what's probably a bit of a career low for him, goes into this house, has to deal with this kid. And what we're watching here is a movie which is struggling with the idea that in the 70s, there was a movie called The Exorcist. And so it is trying to play against that storyline, even though we're watching a family dynamic here, which is kind of just very similar. You've got a mother and child who, you know, are following very similar echoed beats as the Reagan character from The Exorcist and What was it, Ellen Burstyn? Was it Ellen Burstyn?
Ellen Burstyn, yep. And
is that the actress in the Exorcist? Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, and her character, of course, the mother in this is just younger and hotter because, you know, it's the modern age and this is how we do cinema. But then you've got this boy that's been taken. He's sort of very Reagan-like, probably a little less adult than the Reagan character became when, you know, the possession took place. But then there's also this older teenager, and you can even feel this film rebelling against the Exorcist to a point where the demon is so powerful it actually ends up taking over like both teenagers at one point. But it manages to get the teenage daughter to do the we'll use this terrible pun, the exorcised scene from The Exorcist that was restored in the director's cut, which is that infamous spider walk sequence.
Stairs, yes.
Like they resurrect it for this, and it kind of comes out of nowhere in it. It's kind of just a bit, you know, it's a bit cheesy. But the film is directed by Julius.
Maybe I should see this because I did poo-poo it. And
I
still haven't seen it. I turned my back on the screening. I didn't go Wednesday night, and when I texted you yesterday to ask was that the screening you went to, it was because I was literally on my way to the cinema to watch it, and I thought if I don't have to watch this, I'll be fine.
Oh no, I think you should have seen it. So Julius Avery's the director of it, and that's kind of why I was actually fairly enthused to go and see it. So if people know Julius Avery, he's an Australian guy. He's directed a couple of films, but the only one I saw was this film that came from J.J. Abrams' production company called Overlord, which was a World War II era like rescue movie where some soldiers have been sent down on a mission. Okay, except the mission ends up being sort of waylaid by the fact that I'm going to say Italian town that they were in, can't remember exactly where they were, ends up being taken over by some monsters from a nearby Nazi experiment that's taking place in a castle nearby. Anyway, it's very over the top and it's very vibrant and violent and bloody.
He's a really interesting director. He made a film back in 2014 called Son of a Gun, an Australian film that Ewan McGregor and Alicia Vikander came out for, and it is a terrific little genre film as well. He had a terrible time on the Sylvester Stallone film Samaritan, which was literally taken out of his hands and he's all but disowned. But yeah, by all accounts, and you're giving it a much more in-depth appraisal than I ever would have. He looks like he's bounced back with the Pope's Exorcist.
Yeah, I ended up interviewing him once when he was doing the promo for Overlord. And he was there with the star of Overlord, that guy that was also in the Game of Thrones, Pelu
the big Danish guy.
You know him by
the
face.
Big blondie guy, yep.
Yeah, that guy. He's also in, Borgen. Yeah. So anyway, it was the two of them, and they were clearly at the end of what had been a fairly sort of long series of short little 10-minute press moments, and they were very giggly and pretty much didn't acknowledge that I was in a room with them. It was, gosh, I think that might have been one of them now.
I'm a big fan of Overlord, clearly. I'd say the Pope's Exorcist is one to give a go to.
Okay, so here's the thing. So the film, when it's dealing with Russell Crowe's priest character, is huge fun, and I really like that as a character, and I was really into following that character around. He's a bit of a quirky, sort of a funny, sort of offbeat sort of a character who gets around wearing a scooter, driving a scooter, and if you know Russell Crowe and his current sort of latter-day Orson Welles sort of era physique, like, it's hilarious on there, and it's being played for the joke that it is. Like, it's fun. Russell Crowe is really fun in the role. When it starts, and like the supporting cast, including the family who are, you know, dealing with their devil stuff, like they're a fairly engaging like group of actors. The problem is that the film is dealing with the ghost of the Exorcist sort of looming over it. It tries leaning into it and leaning away and isn't hugely successful when it has that push and pull. Also, when it delves a little bit further and you find out who the demon is that's, we'll say, haunting the, you know, premise, and they start getting into the mythology part of what's happening, I think becomes just a little bit tired and isn't really anywhere near as engaging as it could be. But when it steps back from all of that and starts becoming about Russell Crowe, Exorcist character again, it becomes super engaging. There's a sequence right at the end which feels like it's very much built with the idea of turning this into the Pope's Exorcist extended universe. Okay, and when that happens, like, I was gleeful in my chair because I love the potential of that. I find it a bit weird that they kind of have this sort of final sequence, which is setting it up, going, here's how we're going to go and start fighting all these other demons across the world. Okay, like, that's pretty fun, But then you end with the final title card as you see Russell Crowe sort of scootering away with a reminder that his priest character died in like 2006. So it's weird opening up the world of the film, okay, and then suddenly killing off your protagonist in like the next
date on it.
like,
Yeah,
card.
exactly.
Yeah, so it's a little bit weird. Tonally, it's all over the place. I would completely understand if people never see this movie. I totally get that. But I kind of think that if you are watching this probably on streaming in a few months' time, stick with it. Like, there's pleasures to be had from it. There's a lot that detract from the film, but you'll certainly walk away glad that you've experienced something.
Two words to you, Dan Barrett. Mark Mitchell.
Mark Mitchell, con the fruiter
right.
himself.
So there we go. The film is The Pope's Exorcist. It's in fairly wide release as we speak as well. And that brings...
10 years from now, people will only remember it because of the lawsuit that Mark Mitchell brought upon the production.
It sounds like a good idea. It sounds like a litigious kind of film. All right, so...
I think I made the joke in text message saying that catch this film soon because it will only be in cinemas for a couple of days.
Yes, that was a fine text exchange. I think that brings us to the end of an almighty review segment. Let's go to the intermission.
We had plans to keep the reviews fairly short this week, and clearly we did not. But let's keep our intermission pretty short. This is really just us sort of listing stuff more than anything else. We're in Q2 of 2023. Yep. We're about to enter a couple of months where TV shows, anything that's going to be like Emmy Award nominated, it's all being released over the next like 2 to 3 months. So it's going to be a heavy TV season with some really big titles over the next 3 months. Movie-wise, like we're sort of coming into the beginning of that summer period, there's some really big titles on the horizon. So I thought, let's take a look at, Q2 going forward. Like, what are we excited about movies going from April through to June?
That is a terrific idea, and one that came up...
movies and TV shows.
That's a terrific idea. One that came up about 12 minutes before we started doing this podcast. So we've hurriedly got together a list. In fact, it's a pretty good list. Where do you want to start, movies or TV?
Look, let's do TV. I'm going to rattle mine off pretty quickly.
I've got four.
Here,
so you knock yourself out.
Yeah. I thought when I'd proposed this to you that I'd created a list of let's do no more than 3, which is usually what I say to you. And then I realized I made no such sort of comment, so I've got a bit bigger. So I've kept my list pretty short as well, though. Something which I'd recommend is the final season of The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. I've actually seen all but the final episode of it. If you've been watching this program, certainly put this on your radar of things to get excited by, because this 5th and final season, I'm going to put it out there, I think maybe the best season of the show so far. Maisel. I think it's got a lot of... I'm quite fond of it. I don't think I love it, but I'm fond of it. But I think I love this final season. It does a lot to wrap up the series. You don't quite realize how many loose strands there were to the program until the season starts playing it out. Some of the smallest moments start being resolved. Some of the things that haven't really worked in the program in the past, like there's some mobsters involved in the program and have been for the last season or so. There's the Susie character's sister who hasn't really quite worked. But like all this starts being brought into the show again in a really big way that really just like sings magnificently. There's an element to the season that Amazon have asked that people don't necessarily reveal what's happening. But I think that it kind of gives the show a lot more focus than the series has really had traditionally in the past. And I'm really into what that focus is. But we'll talk about that when it's time for release in a couple of weeks' time. I want to say it's April 14th or maybe 22nd or something. So it's about 2 weeks. It's about 2 weeks away from now. So we'll talk about that then. I'm also keen to check out Mrs. Davis. This is the new Damon Lindelof co-created TV show. It's about a nun who's warring against an AI program. It's a big, bold sci-fi. Yeah, it's like a religion versus computer technology, sci-fi thing. Pretty keen to check that out. Also, White House Plumbers. Okay, which if we were going to do a segment this week about movies starring plumbers, we might include this.
They're actually not plumbers.
I joked with Simon that we were going to do... The original idea for the intermission was that we would do our favorite movies and TV shows about plumbers. It was just a joke from me, but I didn't really express it as a joke clearly enough. And Simon went ahead and created a very extensive list of movies with
I found
plumbers.
12 movies with plumbers or plumber-related scenes. A lot of them were porn titles, but there were 12 legitimate films in there. So at some point down the track, when the next major plumber film comes out, I've done my prep.
You've done your prep. Anyway, this is a series. It's a 5-part HBO drama looking at the the Watergate scandal, but through the lens of some people working in
good. Always up for
White House.
Always up for a Watergate White House drama. That's good, and with Woody Harrelson as well.
And my final. Justin Theroux, Domhnall Gleeson, Kiernan Shipka, Lena Headey, Woody Harrelson, incredible cast. And also the return of Sweet Tooth to Netflix on the 27th
yes, that's
of April.
been a couple of years before, hasn't it?
Yeah. So that was a early pandemic series that we've been waiting on, which is a bit difficult because there's a very young cast in it.
Yes, we've all seen how the Stranger Things cast have gone from little moppets into, elder teens, and so that is a challenge.
I mean, the good news here is that most of the kids are wearing extensive prosthetics and makeup, there's little pig children and whatnot, so that might help things.
All right, well that's good.
I wouldn't say Dirk Diggler style for children's prosthetics, Simon, but you do you.
My TV to look forward to, I have become a big fan of anything Apple TV does in the sci-fi realm, so I'm looking forward to Silo. That is the new TV series starring a big cast as well: Rebecca Ferguson, Ian Glenn, the great Will Patton, Tim Robbins is in there. This looks like the kind of dark, serious sci-fi that Apple is increasingly doing with a lot of skill. So yes, I'm all on board for Silo, which drops on Apple TV May 5.
I think I've liked none of their sci-fi works.
You said that. I mean, I think your point you made was, yes, they're all quality, and no, I don't watch any of them because they're kind of they can be a bit stodgy. I never got around to what was the one with Jared Harris in it. I never got around to watching any of that because it just felt too heavy at the time. But I'm loving Extrapolations. I've loved the one about the young mother outrunning the alien invasion, whatever that was called. That was a good one. So yeah, I'm on board for Silo. Big Rebecca Ferguson fan. So I'm also on board for Lizzie Kaplan in the Glenn Close role in Fatal Attraction, the new series on Netflix from April 30. When the film came out.
So Simon, I've seen some of that.
Good news.
Yeah. We'll talk later.
Interesting. When the film came out, it was very much of its time, spoke to the AIDS crisis, the fear of unprotected sex, the fear of letting passion run free, all that sort of thing.
The fear of women.
General misogyny coursing through society's veins. How it's handled in a more contemporary setting in a 2023 world, I'm very keen to see. And, of course, Lizzie Kaplan is always a big plus. I've sort of made the decision to veer away from MCU stuff this year, but I am kind of excited because of the alien invasion element for Secret Invasion, the Disney Plus series starring Samuel L. Jackson, returning as Nick Fury. Secret Invasion put out a pretty terrific trailer through the week, and I'm quite on board for that. So that's something that looks like it could go the and/or route and maybe be smarter than the stuff around it. So I'm quite keen on Secret Invasion. And finally, you mentioned Woody Harrelson, who starred in the first series of True Detective. I'm looking forward to the fourth series of True Detective, Night Country, which sees Jodie Foster return to that investigative role she did so well in Silence of the Lambs. Not playing Clarice Starling, of course, but playing a detective in the True Detective universe is kind of a big deal for me. That's on HBO Max. I don't know if it's got a release date yet, but that's a bit further down the track. So that's a good bunch of 4 TV series, or 8 TV series, including yours, that we're looking forward to.
This is it. So that's a show that doesn't have a release date yet. I'm sure it'll be by the end of June because you need that cutoff for Emmy consideration, and I'd very much be surprised if this is outside of Emmy's release. But yeah, that's why it's not on my list, because we don't actually have a proper confirmation yet.
Cool. Very cool. What are your movies?
Yeah. A couple of movies. So I'm not a big anime guy. Like, I don't mind it, but like, it's not like a chosen genre or anything. But I'm a big fan of Mikasa Shinkai, who made Your Name.
Wow, yeah, that was a wonderful film.
Weathering with You was his more recent film as well. Yep. So he's got a new film coming out. It debuts next week. It's called Suzume, 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 probably. It's about a girl and a mysterious young man who are fighting to close portals from another dimension that are releasing disasters all over Japan. He has these big sort of sci-fi conceits, but grounds them in some really interesting interpersonal
God, Your Name
relationships.
just made me cry like a baby. That was the last time I really sobbed in a movie. I thought Your Name was a terrific film.
Yeah, I remember when there's a moment that happens midway through the film, and I found myself, remember Neverending Story where the kid's upstairs like reading the book and he starts like shouting at the book and like he's carrying on? That's how I was during Your Name. I was like, oh my God, and I was like just shouting at the screen. I don't know much about it, but I'm keen to check out Infinity Pool. This comes out on the 11th of May, and it's a film from Brandon Cronenberg, son of, Papa Cronenberg. Essentially, he's very much sort of taken the David Cronenberg body horror, and he's running with it. I don't know much about this. I've heard some very good things, so keen to check that out. And then beyond that, there's just some really big titles that, as I said, like we're leading into that sort of US summer, so big Hollywood blockbuster things. So 1st of June, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. I adored that first animated Spidey film, and this one I'm sure will be probably not quite as good, but I'm looking forward to it. Bring Spider-Man 2099 to the screen, and God, I love Spider-Man 2099. 15th of June, The Flash. I never thought I'd live to see a day where The Flash starred in a movie I would go and see. It's very much one of my favorite characters, so very keen to go and see that. Asteroid City, which is the new Wes Anderson movie. That comes out June 22nd. And then a week, so like pretty much every week, I've got, just something which is really just tickling my, tickling my bones. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, The Flash, Asteroid City, and then a film which I don't know how I can even comprehend that this film is going to exist, but a brand new Indiana Jones movie called Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, and that comes out June 28th. And, after that last Indiana Jones film, I feel we should all be a little bit apprehensive. But this one's being run by James Mangold, and in Mangold I trust. So I'm expecting big things from that one.
Announced through the week that it's having its world premiere at the Cannes Film Festival and then rolling out across the world. So that's a big deal. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that one as well. Okay, my 4 movies.
Yeah, interesting fact. I couldn't care less that it's playing at Cannes because I can't see it at Cannes, but I can see it when it gets released into a cinema. And I've complained about this before. The problem with a Cannes release is that it usually just delays a movie from me being able to see it.
That's very true indeed. Righto, my 4 movies for the months ahead. As you know, I love my horror films. I can't get any more excited about Evil Dead Rise, which is the latest in the Evil Dead series. The last one a few years ago now, I thought there'd be a sequel before 2023. Rocked my world. It was about as good a remake as I've seen. Reboot I've seen of a franchise in a long, long time. Hopefully they get it similarly right, if that's a terrible phrase. But in Evil Dead Rise out April 20, I am all in on Renfield, the Nicolas Cage vampire Dracula film with Nicholas Hoult. Comes out May 25. It is a very funny, very bloody trailer for that, which got me very excited. June 22. I'm a big Jennifer Lawrence fan, but she's been, pretty heavy on screen all these years in terms of, not heavy, I mean in terms of the material she works with. So I'm very keen to see her do a comedy, and No Hard Feelings is her sort of leaning into the bawdiness for which she's famous off screen. So No Hard Feelings is out June 22, and I'm jumping a little bit beyond.
Now, I'm pretty keen. Sorry, I was going to say I'm pretty keen on that one as well because it's by the guys that did Good Boys, which is a film that I don't know got a cinema release here, but certainly not many people have seen this movie. So if you've not seen Good Boys and want to see a comedy that is laugh out loud, gross and funny through the eyes of some, what were they, like about 10 or 11-year-old boys? Very innocent boys who have been confronted with some very adult ideas throughout the film. Hilarious. Very good.
And then I'm going to jump ahead a little bit to July 23 when
Cheetah.
Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 comes out, which is probably the film I'm most excited about of the American summer films at this point. So a little bummed that it's part one. If you see the trailer, which is this beautiful trailer cut together like a real artist piece of work, it goes Mission Impossible, then it goes Dead Reckoning, and then there's a pause and it goes part one across the bottom. I thought, oh no, so it's going to have an open-ended ending, but I'll let it slide because that just means there's going to be a part two. Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning part 1, July 23. The intermission section is done.
Sorry, just that in 3 months' time when we do Q3, what are we looking forward to? You're not going to be allowed to include that one anymore. So, you've just started yourself.
I'll find a way. I'll slide it in there. Don't you worry about that. There'll be other films to fill it out with. So,
okay, Simon, we are running late, so we're going to skip past what else have you been watching, so I don't have to listen to you talk about the power. And instead, we're going to... Simon, don't want to hear it. Instead, let's go to This Week in History.
Okay, 3 titles. It was a very quiet week for history this week. Couldn't find too much interesting. I think these are interesting. April 9, 1984, Linda Hunt wins the Supporting Actress Academy Award for Peter Weir's The Year of Living Dangerously, marking the first time in Oscar history that... What?
I have no idea. I love Linda Hunt. First time in Oscar. I don't know what that might be.
The first actor to have won an Academy Award portraying a member of the opposite sex. She played Billy Kwan, who was a Chinese-Australian little person and a photographer opposite Mel Gibson's photojournalist Guy Hamilton. Yeah, she was an actress playing a man. There's been obviously, cross-dressing performances that have been nominated, Tootsie and all those sort of things. But the only one to have won for actually playing the opposite gender.
I've not seen The Year of Living Dangerously. So
unfairly ignored in Peter Weir's lineup of films. It's a terrific movie. April 10, 1967, 2 months, April, May, June, before I was born, ABC's nightly current affairs program This Day Tonight, which would go on to become an iconic part of Australian TV history, begins. Who was the first host?
I've no
Bill
idea.
Peach. And he worked as This Day Tonight for 8 years through to 1975, I think, and then began his whole documentary series, Peaches Australia, and those sort of things. He was an important sort of figure in my growing up. April 13.
Yep. Bit before my time.
Oh, you one of these. I love it on Pointless when one of the contestants says, "But I wasn't even born then," and everyone just flips out about how things happened before you were born. April 13, 1994, it is decided that the recently discovered asteroid 7373 will be named after which Star Trek actor?
Sorry, again, a bit before my time. I only really came on board with asteroid 7374.
I understand.
But look, I want to say that it is James Doohan.
It's George Takei. The celestial body's full name is asteroid 7373 Takei. Interesting.
That's a good name for an asteroid.
No, not happy birthday. No, not that. Please, no, not happy birthday.
Birthday day was April 9. April 9, 1954, Dennis Quaid. 1982, Jay Baruchel. 1998, Elle Fanning. Then let's jump ahead to April 11, 2000, Millie Alcock. What do these 4 actors have in common?
Like, this isn't true, but I just wanted to say they're all Canadian, but that's not what it is.
Millie Alcock should be your entry point here. She's sort of known for one thing mostly, 2 things really, but one thing mostly, and you can maybe have a guess with the others. Dead air, that's good.
Not a clue.
All right. Dragons, my friend, they've all co-starred opposite the great scaly monster we call the Dragon. Dennis Quaid in Dragonheart, Jay Baruchel in How to Train Your Dragon, Elle Fanning in the Maleficent films, and Millie Alcock in House of the Dragon. Notice the cap. So, there you go. See, I was doing a clue on my head the whole time. And that brings us to the end of another Screen Watching.
Yeah, see, Millie Alcock, I don't really think associate with House of the Dragon as much as I do. She was in the Australian TV show with the piano being taken across Australia.
Yeah,
Upright.
Yeah. People in Australia know it from that, but all our international listeners will know it from House of the Dragon.
I know, but I'm not an international listener, Simon.
We've got to think about the listening base. We've got to think about the demographic out there. All our people who...
Okay, well, I'm thinking of the fact that I've been listening to this podcast for too long. So I'm going to sign off and say, international audiences, Australian audiences, thank you for listening and watching Screen Watching. You can, of course, find this program as a video show on Spotify and YouTube. But, you can find me. I'm on Twitter. I'm at the Dan Barrett. You can start your day with my free newsletter. It's called Always Be Watching, which you can find at alwaysbewatching.com. It's got the big stories in TV, streaming, and film. And this week the royal we made the move from hosting at Ghost, which is a newsletter platform, to Substack. So if you're already bought into the Substack universe, it's made that a little bit easier with Always Be Watching. And on Friday, you can find the Always Be Streaming newsletter, and that newsletter, it recounts the big shows that launched that very week. But a warning, that newsletter is only for supporters of the Always Be Watching newsletter.
To all our listeners on the International Space Station, you can catch me on Twitter at SimonRFoster1. You read my words at screen-space.net. Visit the Facebook page for Screen Watching at Screen Watching Podcast. Twitter is screen_watching. And on the Screen Watching YouTube channel, as Dan mentioned, you can see my interview with comedian Dane Simpson, who was in the Didgeridoozy special on Paramount Plus over summer, and this week premiered his act on the Melbourne Comedy Festival show on ABC iView. So check that out on our YouTube channel.
Okay, guys, this has been one heck of a podcast, and we'll be back doing a even hecker of a heck podcast.
I'm off to eat my chocolate. Thank you, buddy. Bye-bye.